Welcome into another edition of the Wealthy Pilots Podcast with Scott Osborn and myself as we talk investing, finance, retirement. And this week on the episode, we're going to talk about fiduciary failure, controlling your own destiny, and what's kind of going on with the airline industry. Interesting lawsuit out there that got resolved. So we're going to talk a little bit about that as well. So I guess let's just kick it off, Scott, and get into the ruling that came down, a judge in Texas, I believe, and just what it means for 401ks.
Yeah, I mean, and real quick, let's define ESG too, right? So, that's basically, a lot of the, I'll almost say kind of like social issues out there that are corporate governance, DEI, those kind of, social initiatives. There's been a lot of investment advisors that have, issued a screening criteria out there that's basically like, hey, if you don't want to own companies that are not subscribing to these kind of values, then, we can build a portfolio for you. Now, that's not a huge deal. There's absolutely nothing wrong with investing in line with your values. But I think the problem comes when, just getting a little technical here, if we look at the design of a 401k retirement plan for employees, those employees are somewhat hamstrung to operate within the parameters of the plan. And so when that plan is, how it's written in the IRS code, that 401k is just literally the IRS code number that has to do with these, ERISA-based retirement plans. And so that in that 401k standard, there is a what's called a fiduciary duty. And a fiduciary is somebody or an entity that has to do everything that they do has to be in the best interest of the participants of the plan or the clients that they serve or whatever the case is. And so there's, in the advisory industry, there's different standards. There's a suitability standard, which is basically like, very common in the insurance or broker dealer world, where they just have to prove that what the recommendations are suitable for the client. Whereas in the 401k space, or even how we're licensed too, you have to meet the fiduciary standard, which is doing everything in the client's best interest.
All right, so let's talk a little bit about the, you mentioned suitability, all right, versus fiduciary. So obviously it's suitable, to do a couple of options, but you have to do the best option when it's fiduciary. So like if there's three options that are presented itself from a financial professional, they have maybe an insurance only person, we'll just say that. They have three different options that they can present to a client. As long as they're all suitable, they could pick whichever one maybe even benefits themselves with a little perk or a higher payout or whatever. Whereas the fiduciary has to go with the best option that is for their client. You'd think that would be something that would be in every industry, but it is what it is.
Absolutely. And that's where, the phrase conflicts of interest come in. And that's really where this started to go awry, is that, hey, BlackRock's adding this screening criteria into some of their target date funds and into some of the portfolio design inside of a 401k where, unless participants really know how to get under the hood and open those self-directed options up and build their own portfolio, that's what we do for a lot of clients. But, there's not a ton of people that want to do that on their own.
Exactly. That's why you do an easy set default program, set it and forget it.
Absolutely. But when you start taking the default options for the company and, you have large asset managers that are kind of playing politics behind the scenes and dictating that, hey, these default options need to meet this ESG screening criteria. And that's leading to less than, desirable returns for the client. Was basically, and kudos to the American Airlines pilot that filed the lawsuit, because it was a pilot that was basically like, hey, this is not right. And so kudos to him for standing up for his beliefs and really, I think, getting a big win for that plan design. And I'll be curious if there's any other shoes that fall.
So this judge in Texas, Reed O'Connell, basically said that the airline had an incestuous relationship basically with BlackRock, and they just weren't doing what was in the client's best interest. So that's why they made this ruling about the 401k. And again, as a fiduciary, you've got to do what's in the client's best interest. Yeah. That's what you do.
Yeah, absolutely. That's how we're licensed. But ultimately in terms of like the people that are listening to this, like, hey, what do we what do we do about that? You can just take the default option, and this doesn't apply just to American, United, Delta, whether you're looking in Fidelity or Schwab, you're getting put into a certain target date fund, or you're even getting put into, certain mutual funds. I was just talking to a United guy the other day, and like, hey, when we look in this mutual fund, that's the default fund for you to own large cap stocks. You got to peel back the onion a little bit and say what's actually in that fund. Okay, we can see that there's actually 4 mutual funds inside of that one fund. And those mutual funds each have a little bit higher than normal expense ratio. There's ESG screening criteria. And it's like, man, you got to get under the hood to really see that. It's like page 37 of the 401k plan document. Like you got to really be nerding out to find it.
No, exactly. And think about it this way. A lot of people will go to see a financial professional such as yourself, and they'll say, hey, I bought 4 different mutual funds at 4 different companies, so I'm diversified.
Yeah, all the same
but when you go under the hood, they actually have the exact same thing in all the mutual funds. Most likely, a lot of times that's what we see is overlap. So you're really not diversified.
Yeah. Well, and that's a lot of why, a lot of the education material we put out there is really like, are you getting the most out of your 401k? Obviously just contributing into it to max the 401k out is one thing, but understanding the options available to you, making confident decisions that are in your best interest, and then sticking with that plan. I definitely think that you probably have the opportunity to do better than you've been doing. I'm not necessarily saying from a returns perspective, but do better than you've been doing with, actively working in a confident way on something that's in your best interest than just taking what the company's given you, because there's other powers at play in setting those default options up.
Yeah, for sure. So let's not forget, you're not the client as the person that is in the 401k, right? You work for an airline. The airline is the client of the company that's providing the 401k and so on and so forth. So
yes,
just don't forget that they're doing what's in their interest, not necessarily yours all the time, which is why the options are limited.
Well, and it's interesting. Like I have clients, a 401k plan has participants. Yeah, you're participating in the plan. I mean, you can choose to opt out of it and invest, lose all the tax advantages, but it's not like you can say, well, I have this plan or this plan or this plan. But what we can do is inside of the plan, most of these major airlines do give you an option to kind of get under the hood and build your own plan inside of there. So generally, we are definitely recommending that for people who are looking to get more out of their 401k, more than just what comes with the default. And we can really open you up to the entire universe of what's out there from an investment standpoint. And so, that's a lot of what we recommend people try to get some confidence and get some education to understand what's going in there, because it makes a huge difference over the life of your career. And a lot of times just taking an hour to get things organized and set in your direction, and then letting it go the next 10, 15, 20 years. I mean, it can make a huge, huge difference in terms of where you land in retirement and how much retirement income you're willing to enjoy, compared to just taking the default. And candidly, all the guys I'm meeting with on the phone or over the web going through this stuff, they know. I mean, these are very, very professional, talented folks that are flying these airplanes for these major airlines. They have been through significant levels of education and training and are used to doing things to extremely high standards. And so, Mark, when we're meeting with them and we're talking about them, they know, they're like, I know there's something more to this. It's just that having that, really that patience and, energy to get into page 32 of the 401k plan and figure it out. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's why you got a full-time job and maybe then some. So you got to hire a professional to help you get this stuff done. So as always, if you got questions, need some help, reach out to Scott. You can find him at retireairlines.com. That's retireairlines.com. Don't forget to subscribe to the podcast, the Wealthy Pilots Podcast, on Apple, Spotify, or YouTube. Click the little thumbs up and the notification bell so you can catch new episodes when they come out, and get some time on Scott's calendar. Again, if you're digging the content, we certainly appreciate all the new people coming on and checking it out. Find us again online at retireairlines.com. That's retireairlines.com. We'll see you next time here on the podcast.
Information is for illustrative purposes only and does not constitute tax, investment, or legal advice. Always consult with a qualified investment, legal, or tax professional before taking any action.